Welcome back. Here we are in the midst of Olympic fever, and joining us now is Jessica Phoenix, who just returned from Rio, where she competed in an equestrian category called eventing. Welcome, Jessica.
Thanks for having me.
I don't think most people understand about eventing.
Eventing is an incredible sport that everyone should get to know. It's the absolute test of horse and rider. It's 3 phases, like a triathlon of horse and rider, and it's just a really exciting sport.
And men and women compete together against each other. There's no separation of sex.
Yep, it's incredibly unique, especially at the Olympic level, to compete against men. There's no age categories, and it's really incredible to watch.
And this year, it was an all-women's team.
It was, yeah, girl power.
Girl power.
Yeah.
Now, not to dwell on this, but before you actually went, you had to actually challenge them on your place to compete on this team. What happened?
So every year we go through a selection process, and then there's a team of 4 athletes named, and then they normally name up to 2 reserves. So we were actually put on the team as a reserve. So we actually went through the appeals process, and it went through the Sport Resolution Centre of Canada, and we ended up winning the appeal and then giving us the right to compete on the team.
And you did fairly well.
We did, yeah. Yeah, it was an incredible event. We had a great group of people there with us, and we ended up finishing 10th as a team.
Now, I understand from some people who were sort of in that milieu that this was a really tough course.
This course was absolutely the hardest Olympic track. When you run through the statistics of it, the actual completion rate was very low, and the clear completion rate was the lowest at any Olympic Games ever in history.
Jessica, I think you're going to have to explain to us a little bit about what's involved. The 101 on eventing, when you talk about completion, I don't think our listeners, I certainly don't understand what you mean.
Okay, no problem. So our sport's comprised of 3 areas. So the first is dressage, and the horse and rider go into the ring, and every horse and rider ride the exact same test. Each movement is marked out of 10. And at the end of the test, they change your score into penalty points, and that's what you move forward to the second day with. The second day is the cross-country phase. It is the absolutely most challenging phase of 3-day eventing. It's really testing the horse's endurance and the rider's endurance. It's moving at upwards of 25 miles an hour at solid obstacles that do not fall down. You're jumping through water. You're going over ditches, up and down banks. Huge logs. It's really the most exciting part of 3-day eventing.
Is this where people don't complete?
Yeah.
Is this the worst part?
This is, yeah. So for this Olympic Games in Rio, it was one of the most demanding cross-country courses that we've ever seen at an Olympic Games, and it had a very low rate of completion. So I think it was actually just a 60% completion rate. So 40% of the field didn't make it through this phase, which is, I mean, it's really an outstanding fact. And then after cross country, the following day, we have show jumping, which is what most of the general public is aware of. A lot of people see it on TV at Spruce Meadows, jumping over the fences that do knock down. And that's just to, again, test the horse's endurance, their ability to come back the next day and be careful over the show jumping fences.
Now, eventing, correct me if I'm wrong, started in the Berlin Olympics.
That's right, yep.
So what did they have before?
Eventing, kind of the history, the 101 on eventing is it started as a military training. So everybody in the Army would actually compete in this phase to make sure that the bravery of the horse and rider were such that they could go to war. And then it kind of evolved into this Olympic
Interesting
sport.
year for it to start.
Right? Yes.
So how has it changed since then, or has it? Or is it still pretty much the same rules that were set
the
then?
sport has evolved so much, even in the time that I have been around. When I started eventing at the international level, it was 1997. And it was actually a long format of eventing. So the dressage test has definitely gotten more intricate and more demanding as the years have gone on. And then the cross-country test actually used to be 4 phases within the cross-country day. So you had roads and tracks where you had to trot for upwards of 40 to 60 minutes. Then you also had to do the steeplechase course, which was running flat out over brush fences. And then you would have a 10-minute breather, and then you would go out and do the cross-country course, which is what our sport has evolved into now.
Well, from what I understand, this particular thing, this event, is all about the relationship between you and the horse.
Absolutely. This event really tests that relationship. The horses and riders need to have 110% trust in each other. The fences and the questions that we ask these horses to jump on cross country are so technical, and it really just tests how much that horse trusts you and believes in you. So it's definitely, you spend a lot of time with your animals and you have a huge rapport with them.
But what I mean by that is it's much more difficult because you have to find the right horse and then develop the relationship and then be able to guide that horse and have that trust. And that's not something that you can really train for, or is it?
You're completely right. It's not something you can train for. We try to just spend a lot of time with our horses so that we have that trust in each other. And then you try to put the horses in as many different scenarios as possible. So oftentimes we go to cross-country training areas where we can go through water jumps and over ditches and kind of set up all different questions that we might expect to see at the international games.
So where were you? Where were you riding?
So we were just in Rio at Diodoro. Mm-hmm. And actually, funny enough, it was around a military town, so there was
there's connections
tons of
everywhere.
Military and army guys on horseback with machine guns. It was pretty interesting.
Fun.
Yeah.
So what was Rio like overall? Because there's a lot of people, scared. We have Olympic athletes being mugged.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you find the whole environment?
To be honest with you, we were so prepared by the Canadian Olympic Committee for all different scenarios, and when we got there, it was honestly a relief. We felt extremely safe everywhere that we went within the bubble, so within the athlete village and within our actual competition venue and the Olympic transportation. We felt very safe.
So what about the future? Are you going to go on to another Olympics?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, 100%.
What is your goal?
My goal is to win gold at the Olympics.
That's a good goal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, is there an age limit in this particular category? It wouldn't seem there would be. I mean, in some sports, after a certain point.
You know what? I was actually reading the statistics. They did an analysis of the ages and the actual athletes and which competitions they were competing in at the Olympics, and equestrian had the oldest athletes in the entire Olympic Games.
And yet your relationship with your horses have been your whole life. I mean, you say you got your first horse at 1?
Yes, yeah.
Unbelievable.
It is. It's unbelievable. Yeah, my parents, we had a little 2-acre hobby farm in Uxbridge, Ontario. And my sister's 2 years older than me, and we got just a little pony in our backyard. It was always my mom's dream to have horses.
Boy, I bet you were the
backyard.
envy of all your schoolmates.
I don't know. Uxbridge then was a pretty big farming town, so I feel like a lot of people had horses in their backyard.
And how long do you have that relationship with a horse, a competing horse? I mean, the horse is not going to go on until they're 60.
Yeah. Normally, we start training the horses when they're around 4 years old. They typically do their first international competition when they're 6 to 7 years old. And then we see the majority of major games horses. 9 would be the youngest. And I think the oldest at these Olympics were 18.
18?
18 years old.
Competing like that?
Yes.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I found out a lot of stuff today.
I know.
Thank you.
So there is longevity in the sport for both horse and rider. Yeah.
That's good. Well, then you have plenty of time to win that gold, but we'd like you to win it next time around.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes. That's a deal.
All right. We'll hold you to it. Thank you so much for coming in.
No problem.
When we come back, civility expert Anjali Handa will join us to talk about how much incivility exists in the workplace and what the impact is on business. This is What She Said. We'll be right back.